Hey everybody, how you doing? It's Max, Chief Evangelist over here at Happily, and today I'm going to be showing you the experience that an approver has when they are approving quotes created using quote happily. All right, so we've done videos in the past showing you how you can use workflows in HubSpot, specifically quote-based workflows, to create the approval process of your dreams for your quotes, but we haven't necessarily showed you what it looks like for the person actually approving the quote and what that experience is like for them, as well as the person waiting for the quote to be approved. So I'm going to give you that experience right here. We're not necessarily going to focus on a hyper complex quote approval process, just more so what the people see on the end that are asked to actually approve the quotes and the feedback that people get on the other end that are sending them to approval. All right, let's go ahead and dive into it here. Now, first, just real quick, to show you the most basic example of how to set up an approval process for your quotes, right? You're going to need two things. One, you're going to want to set up a workflow, a quote-based workflow specifically, that will send quote approvals to people when quotes get enrolled in the workflow. So the easiest way to do this, the most bare minimum, right, way is creating a quote-based workflow, and you're going to trigger the quote when the quote approval status property is any of pending approval. The easiest way to enroll a quote into a quote-based workflow for approval. Then you're going to want to have at least one request quote approval action from quote happily and at least one email address in here, right? So I'm sending all the quote approvals to myself just so I can show you what it looks like for that person who's asked to approve a quote, what they're actually experiencing in the tool. And then, of course, you're going to want an action that publishes the quote if it does indeed get approved, right? So what we're then going to do is we need to go into the quote happily admin and we need to set up a quote rule that's actually going to send a quote into an approval and get it into that pending approval state. So what I've done here is I've set up a quote rule that's basically going to say, hey, any discounts over 5% are going to require an approval, right? So I set up my conditions here to say, hey, if there's a discount percentage on any of the line items greater than 5 but less than 10, make sure the outcome is require approval. And it gives a little message here. And I'm not adding it to a specific approval queue, but I could do that if I wanted to. This is simply just going to put the approval status into pending approval, all right? And then you hit save, you're good to go. Okay, now, let's actually go create a deal that's going to require an approval, and I'll show you what happens here, all right? So let's go and make a deal. I am going to create a deal, and I'm just going to call this test approval deal, and we're going to go ahead and create it. So we have our deal here, all right? So pretty simple stuff so far. What I'm going to do is I am going to go into the quote happily card here, and I'm going to create a new quote. Not going to do anything special. I'm simply going to come in and select a product from my product library. I've got my basic price book here showing everything, and I'm just going to select a medium object to put in as one of my line items. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down here. You'll notice this is giving me a little notify rule here that says you may offer up to a 5% discount without seeking an approval for this customer. All right. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to break that. And I'm going to say, hey, I want to offer a 6% discount, or better yet, I want to offer an 8% discount. I'm going to go a little bit higher, right? Now, what you'll notice is that the approval rule kicked in and it says, hey, this quote's going to require finance approval since you're discounting over 5%. That's fine. You'll notice my button down here is also changed to submit for approval. Okay. So at this point, I can go ahead and submit the quote for approval. Okay. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to put ourselves in the shoes of the person who's responsible for actually approving that quote. Okay. So I'm now putting on my quote approver hat, right? And I'm going to go check my email because I should be getting an email soon saying, hey, there's a quote that requires your approval. Let's go check that out. So I'm in my email inbox here, and I just got an email saying action required, a quote requires your approval, and then the date here. All right. So if I come into here, I can see, hey, Max, me being the person who's approving the quote, right? The following quote requires your review. All right. So it gives you the quote name, the quote owner, and the quote amount. And then what I can do is I can click this button that says review quote. Now, this is going to bring me not into HubSpot. It's going to bring me into something that looks a lot like HubSpot. It's going to bring me into the quote happily admin, right? Where I can actually review the quote that was created. So I can review the quote that was created. I can see what they're trying to get approved here, right? But also on the left side, I have this quote activity panel. And this is going to give me a chronological history of everything this quote has gone through from an approval process. So if it's been approved by other people before it got to me, I'm going to see that chain of custody until it got to me, right? So we'll see this in this timeline on the left, right? Now, I have two options here. Three. One, I could go take a look at the deal if I want to see some more specifics around the deal itself, or I can just look at the actual quote, and I can do two things. I can return it with comments, basically rejecting it, right? Or I can hit approve. I'm going to reject it so you can see what this looks like. Now, let's say I'm like, you know what? 8% is a little bit much, right? Why don't you do like a 6% discount? I can return it with comments, and I'd say, why don't we offer 6% instead, right? Or whatever reason you want to reject the quote. And I can hit return with comments, okay? So what's going to happen here is that quote is going to go and actually get rejected, all right? Now, what's going to happen is me as the person who sent the quote in for approval, I am going to get an email here, right? So again, I'm playing both characters here. So just remember, I'm like switching between two different people. So here it's saying changes are required to your quote. So again, character switch. I'm the person now who actually submitted the quote, right? It's saying, hey, the quote has been returned to you for changes, which means it got rejected, right? And what I'll see here is that Max reviewed it, Max being the other Max in this case, and you got comments here. So you'll see who rejected and the comments that they actually left. It's important to denote who rejected it because in theory, different people could be approving or rejecting the quotes, depending on if you send it to multiple people at once or maybe just one person in each sort of additional quote approval you're requiring, right? But I can see who it was, so I can reach out to them if I need clarification, and I can see what their comments were. So they're saying, why don't we offer a 6% instead? And I go, okay, cool. I'll change it to 6%. So I can actually just click this link to come right back into the deal, right? And on the top right-hand side, what I'll actually see with the quote happily card is that this deal actually has, or this quote has a status of rejected. And I need to go back in and fix it, right? So I can take that feedback that they gave me, I could go back into the quote here and I can see basically what happened. It got returned for edits, right? And again, I can see that whole chain of custody. I see the whole history. So I'm going to go and edit here. And I'm going to come down here and I am going to bring this down to 6. Okay. Now this still is meeting that requirement for me to actually submit it for approval, right? I could go down to 5 and skip this entirely if that's the threshold that I set. But in this case, I want to show you what actually happens when they approve it, right? So I'm going to say, cool, bring it down to 6. I'll resubmit it for approval here. Awesome. And so the quote's back out for approval, right? Again, character switching back to the person who's the actual approver of the quote itself. What's going to happen is, again, I'm going to get an email here. Hey, a quote requires your approval, right? Awesome. I can go and take a look at it. So let's hit review quote. Again, when we're on this page, we'll see the chronological history. So originally it got submitted, it got requested for a review. I returned it for edits. They requested it again, and it came back to me. So again, I can see this entire history of everything that's happening to this quote here. I can take a look. Awesome. They changed it to 6%. This looks good for me. I'm going to go ahead and hit approve. So now that I've hit approved, I'm done. I don't really need to do anything else, but we got to make sure the sales rep is getting notified that their quote got approved. We come back into the email inbox here. Again, I'm now switching my character back to the original sales rep. I'll get an email here saying, hey, your quote's been approved. Great. Awesome. I can see it. It's been approved. If I want to jump right to the quote itself, I can do that. I can go send this link to somebody else, or I can just jump directly back into the deal. And then on the deal, if I take a look at the quote happily quotes card on the top right-hand corner, I can see that the quote is now published and I'm able to use it. So that's how the experience works for not only the approver, but the approvee or the requestor of the approval. We use very clear email communication to say, hey, there's a quote, needs your review. You can approve it. You can reject it. You can see that entire history. And it just gives you a much better visual understanding of what's happening in that chain of command for actually approving the quote instead of hiding it in a task in HubSpot somewhere, which is the native experience, right? And there's a lot more things that are worse about the native experience, but that's at least how it works if you're someone who's responsible for approving quotes inside of HubSpot. If you've got any questions around how quote approvals can be much better using quote Hapily, feel free to let us know in the comments below, shoot us a DM on LinkedIn, or hit us up at care@hapily.com. We'd be happy to help you out. Hope you guys are having an awesome day, and see you in the next video.